Greetings, friends. In these days leading up to Rosh Hashanah, I'd like to talk about a topic which is always very hot in the Jewish world, which is Jewish identity. Jewish organizations seem to always be concerned with how do we preserve Jewish identity, how do we get Jewish people to identify as Jewish and care about that, and so on. So the question I want to address is there anything about identity, about Jewish identity, which is helpful from a presence point of view, from a spiritual enlightenment point of view? And so, to talk about Jewish identity, let's look at the word which is the hub of Jewish identity, the word Yisrael, the name of the people Israel. So there are three places I want to look in the Torah for what the meaning is of this expression Yisrael. The first one comes when Jacob is afraid of confronting his brother, that his brother might kill him because he had stolen the birthright, and so on. And the night before he confronts his brother, it says that he encountered this being that he wrestled with all night long. And at the end of the night, he was victorious over this being. It never explains who this being is exactly. But he captures the being. The being says, "Let me go, the dawn is breaking." And he says, "You must first bless me." And so this being says, "Okay, no longer will your name be Yaakov, Jacob, but your name will be Yisrael." Why Yisrael? Ki sarita im Elokim ve'im anashim v'tuchal. So what does that mean? Sarita means striving with or wrestling with, contending with. So ki sarita im Elokim, you have striven with the divine, ve'im anashim, and also with people. Va'tuchal. That word tuchal means possible or able. So it's saying you were wrestling with God and people and you were able. It was possible. Sometimes it's translated as you were victorious. So what does it mean that he was striving with God? In the context of the story, he's about to meet his brother, so he's overcome with fear. He splits his camp up into two to make sure he keeps everybody safe. And then he has this experience of wrestling this mysterious being and somehow comes out with the name Yisrael. And the next day, of course, he makes up with his brother. He has a reconciliation with his brother and they kiss and weep on each other's shoulders. So what does this mean in terms of having the identity of Yisrael for yourself? It invites the question, what is holding me back from fully committing to practice in every moment? Because as we move through life and different experiences are constantly arising and we're interacting with our situations, trying to fulfill our responsibilities, trying to achieve certain goals, and so on, the tendency is to become absorbed into the map that the mind is holding concerning reality. And this is the way most people go through life to some degree anyway, is being identified with, being trapped in the map that we hold inside, as opposed to connecting with reality itself as it is. And from that map, which has projections about what's going to happen and the story about what has happened, arises fear, worry, tension, stress. But to the degree that you can see that dynamic within yourself and see your consciousness getting absorbed or drawn into the inner map, then there's the possibility of feeling yourself, of knowing yourself as that open space of awareness which is not separate from the present moment that we're always in, and knowing that whatever your mind is conceiving, whatever your understanding of the situation you're in, your responsibilities toward it, your view of what's happening out there, that all of that experience is arising within the space of awareness that you are. And so to the degree that you can practice this moment by moment, it's really not moment by moment, because there's not more than one moment, but sometimes we use the word moment to describe the different experiences that are arising. But it's actually experience by experience, not moment by moment, because there's only one moment, and that one moment is actually who you are. You are the present moment. And within this present moment, experiences are constantly happening. And the mind, with its thought and its navigational abilities, is painting a picture of what experiences will come up, predicting what will happen based on the conditioning that is coming from memory. But practice noticing that, and practice being the present moment within which the experience is arising, knowing that there's only one experience and there's only one reality. Then you can actually have victory. You can express the meaning of the identity of Yisrael, of being victorious, of being able to find that one godly reality, which is, again, the space of this moment, which is your consciousness within which everything is coming and going, but which itself is not coming and going. And in that realization of the one divine, as we sometimes call it, reality, there is the falling away of fear. There's victory over time, victory over mind, victory over your preferences, over your worries, over your stresses, over your fears, over everything that the mind ordinarily considers to be a problem. And so you become problem-free. But to do that, you have to practice constantly. And to practice constantly, you have to really know, really be aware that you can practice constantly. As it says, Sarita im Elokim ve'im anashim v'tuchal. You were striving for the divine and wrestling with humans, meaning really wrestling with your humanness, right? Wrestling with this universal human tendency to be stuck, to be caught, to be seduced by thought and time and mind, which are all the same thing. Vatuchal, and you are able. You're completely able. It's completely possible. If you are watching this or listening to this right now, that means you already have enough understanding and power to do teshuva, to return to your actual experience in this moment constantly, again and again and again, all day long, and establish yourself in freedom. Which brings us to the second mentioning of the name Yisrael that I wanted to talk about, which is the very beginning of the Ten Commandments. God says to Yisrael, Anochi Hashem Elohecha, I am being, existence, divine reality, which is the same as your own inner divinity. Asher hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, Mitzrayim, which means constriction, narrowness, mi beit avadim, from the house of slavery. In other words, it's a bit of a paradox because we practice presence constantly in order to tap into our innate reality as freedom. But we have to do that because that's not ordinarily the way we experience life. The ordinary human experience is to be completely identified with mind and feeling and body. And so whether your experience is good or bad, and of course there's a huge spectrum of suffering that human beings can experience, it's still ultimately Beit Avadim, the house of slavery, and Mitzrayim, the narrowness of Egypt, because rather than knowing yourself as expansive openness, you know yourself as this particular person. But it's saying here in this verse, God already brought us out of Egypt. We're already free. So what does that mean? It means that if you can understand this teaching right now, if you're hearing these words, then you already have this very profound freedom, even if you're not experiencing it, even if you feel yourself completely identified with ego, with emotion, with worry, with stress, or with whatever concerns are arising as part of the ego experience. If you can understand the teaching of how to practice presence and you start applying it and you do it yourself, that's an incredible freedom that you've been given as a gift. You didn't create that freedom. It's a form of grace. It's coming to you just by the fact that you can understand the teaching and you have the ability to decide to apply it right now. That's a freedom that you don't get from your practice. It's a freedom that you have been gifted. And that's why it's messaged in this way, meaning that God already brought us out of Egypt in the past. As soon as we hear this message that God brought us out of Egypt already, in order to what? In order to practice presence so that we can open up the experience of our innate freedom, then that statement is true. Before we know that we have this choice, the statement isn't true. We're not free. We don't have the freedom to become free because we don't have any understanding or experience of it. But as soon as that desire for freedom is ignited within you, or even just on the intellectual level, an interesting curiosity, what is this talking about? What is this experience of freedom that is talked about in the spiritual enlightenment traditions? What is it? Can I practice it myself? As soon as you have that question, that desire within you, then you are free to explore it and you're free to apply it. But don't let fear or self-doubt get in your way. Just do it. Just practice it. Practice presence. Which brings us to the third and last mention of Yisrael I wanted to talk about, which is the verse Shema Yisrael. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The Shema. Shema Yisrael, but just the first two words, Shema Yisrael, is giving us this most basic, fundamental mitzvah of presence. That's what Shema Yisrael is. The mitzvah Shema Yisrael is not just to say Shema Yisrael every day. That might be an initial level if you can't get past that yet. But once you pay attention to what these words are actually saying, Shema Yisrael, then you can take on their challenge, which is to be aware that there's one reality unfolding. It's not separate from you. It's not other than you. There's no inside and outside as two distinct realities, even though that's part of our ordinary egoic feeling that there's a me and then there's the rest of it. But when you look at what your experience actually is, you can see that there is simply experience arising in awareness. And so then you become aware of Hashem Echad, the unity of reality, the unity of being. So this is all to say that you can use your Jewish identity, meaning the word Yisrael, to remind you of these three vital things. The first thing is you are able. You are absolutely able to be victorious over the powers of thought and feeling and time, which are all ultimately the same thing, meaning that to be victorious over the content of your experience that ordinarily tends to seduce us into an egoic mindset or an egoic position in relation to our experience. You can be victorious. Why are you able to be victorious? Why are you able to do that? That's the second sentence. Ani Hashem Elohecha asher hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. The divine has already given us this gift of freedom. We've already been taken out of constriction and slavery simply because we are able, we have the ability to understand this teaching and apply it in every situation that we encounter. If we remember, of course, if we remember to do it, and that's part of this whole work, and that's the purpose of this teaching right now, is to help us to remember. And what is it we're remembering? We're remembering Shema Yisrael. That's the practice itself. So let's do some of the practice. Hopefully we're already doing it, applying it, of course, through the entire experience of this teaching, and once it's over, continuing to apply it. But I want to start with a chant today that I think is the first chant I've ever put in one of these teachings that's going to be mostly in English. Now, it's a little bit corny. It may seem a little bit cheesy. Chanting things in English can seem corny or cheesy. So if you feel like it's corny to you, I invite you to just be with that feeling of corniness a little bit, because the meaning of this chant is so vital, it's so important, and it's so helpful, regardless of whether you use the chant to internalize this or not. The meaning of it is really important. So that's the point. And the meaning is going to be Yisrael. That's the understanding of who you are in this life, Yisrael. Yisrael, identity. Yisrael, identity, meaning the understanding that this is who we are in this life. And what is the Yisrael identity? Free to practice constantly, understanding that you are free to apply this all the time. It's up to you to do it. And when you do, victory, you will have victory over time, over thought, over all the forces, the seductive forces of situation, of momentary situation. One reality, bringing your mind and heart in connection with the one reality that is expressing itself in all these different experiences. And that's also devekut or devekus in Hasidic talk, attaching yourself to the eternal as opposed to attaching yourself to the things that you can never grab onto because they're always changing. There's nothing that's permanent in our experience except for the open space of experience itself. So we attach ourselves simply through awareness of, not through holding on or grabbing, but just through being aware of one reality, one experience. And that's devekut. That's the practice. So, Yisrael identity, free to practice constantly. Victory, one reality, Yisrael identity, free to practice constantly. Victory, one reality. Yisrael identity, free to practice constantly. Victory, one reality. Yisrael identity, free to practice constantly. Victory, one reality. Yisrael identity, free to practice constantly. Victory, one reality. Yisrael identity, free to practice constantly. Victory, one reality. Yisrael identity, free to practice constantly. Victory, one reality. And let's come into some meditation for about 7 minutes. Bringing right hand to your heart, the portal of the heart to presence by offering your awareness as a gift to reality, to God, to this moment with Lecha. Lecha. And bringing left hand to your belly, connecting with your body, feeling into your legs, to your lower back and belly, your chest, shoulders and arms, hands and fingers, face, skull, brain. Bringing a little smile to your lips and feeling the flow of your breathing. Sarita im Elokim ve'im anashim vatuchal. Doing battle, in a sense, with all of the forces of humanness that tend to seduce us into ego. Vatuchal. You are able to return again and again. Return again, return again, returning awareness to the body and to your breathing. You can do it. Na'aseh, breathing in. Na'aseh. And right hand to your forehead, being aware that the awareness dwelling within your body is also not limited to your body, an open field of presence without border or boundary. V'nishma, breathing in. V'nishma. And chanting Atahu, Atahu, Atahu. Atahu, 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 Atahu. Grounding your mind in Atahu, and we'll sit for 7 minutes. And closing once again with the 3 portals. Hand on your heart, offering awareness. Lecha. Lecha. Left hand on your belly, doing awareness, bringing awareness to your body and to your breathing. Naaseh. Naaseh. Right hand touching forehead, being awareness. Venishma. Venishma. Atahu, remember that you can always do Lecha Naaseh Venishma in any moment to bring yourself back again, return again more deeply to presence. Have a wonderful Rosh Hashanah. May the sound of the shofar also awaken your desire for freedom, desire for the divine, and your commitment and motivation to strengthen your kavanah, strengthen your practice in all situations, ve'al ha'aretz mitachat, in every situation that you encounter, that this should be a year of deepening presence and deeper establishment in the reality of what you truly are. Amen. Chag Sameach.